Hey everyone, welcome to Great Lakes Church. My name is Carson, and I gotta tell you before we get into our weekly message that we're a community of people helping people find and follow Jesus. We're based out of Southeast Wisconsin. We have physical locations in Kenosha and Racine, but if you're listening to this or watching this, you've found our online presence. We share content on our YouTube and our podcast platforms wherever you listen, and we love that you're a part. If you want to know more about what's going on here at Great Lakes Church, you can find out more at greatlakeschurch.com or check out our central hub. But until then, everything you need is going to be in the description, so enjoy the message, and we'll catch you next time.
3 weeks ago, a guy by the name of Josh Petersen spoke for the very first time at Great Lakes Church. And after he was done speaking, I received emails and phone calls and texts asking the question, where did you find this guy? And I said, tall, talented individuals are like drawn to me. I'm a magnet for these kind of people. No, I did not say that, right? But it was really encouraging because it was his first time speaking here. Then he spoke the following week, which would have been 2 weeks ago. Once again, I received emails and calls and texts just from different individuals telling me just how meaningful the talk was. And one of those texts was from someone who just texts me once or twice a year. And here's what they said. They said, Happy Father's Day, Dave. Can we keep Josh? Please. He's amazing. Well, I'm happy to report to you, we are keeping Josh. He is officially joining our staff here at Great Lakes Church full-time at the end of July. He's going to be overseeing our campus experience teams, and he's going to be working with Kenosha groups. He's also going to be teaching throughout the year. And I am excited for you in the coming weeks, in the coming months, and in the coming years to get to know Josh Petersen even more. And so for those of you who've been praying, thank you. Because some of you do not know this, that from January of this year until now, I have been the only full-time pastor for 1,200 people that show up every single week between two campuses. For adults, we have people working with kids and students. I'm the only full-time pastor for adults, so I have been in desperate need of God sending someone our way. And so your prayers have worked. Keep praying because we have more positions to fill. But I have hung out with Josh now multiple times and in multiple settings. And there's just something about the realness that just draws you in. And it was confirmed by the different references I called, because all of the references said the same thing and they said it in different ways, but they said Josh is the real deal. So he is speaking again today, and I hope he doesn't screw it up, all right? So in just a moment, I want you to put your hands together, give it up for the newest staff member of Great Lakes Church.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, there's a line, I love that clip. Dave and I were talking about our favorite comedians earlier in the week, and that line right there is pretty awesome. Or murdered. It could be very extreme, right? Like something really great could happen or something really crazy bad could happen. And I remember the text that I got from Dave about 6-7 weeks ago. I'd never met him before. A mutual friend had hooked us up, and he asked me if I wanted to get together for lunch, and I was like, this could be really cool, or this could be really bad. It's been nothing but amazing, and my few weeks here have been amazing, and I have loved getting to know some of you. I know we've got a long ways to go. We'll get to know each other really, really well, though. This is an incredible community, and it is filled with people that are real. And you have to go some ways to find a church that's as real as Great Lakes. And so I just feel honored and privileged to be here. And there's one of my favorite movies of all time is Christmas Vacation. I watch it in July usually, so I'm about due. And there's a line in there when Cousin Eddie shows up, and he and Clark are standing in the living room, and he says, "Are you surprised to see me, Clark?" And he says, "Eddie, if I woke up tomorrow with my head sewn to the carpet, I wouldn't be more surprised than I am right now." And that's kind of how I feel walking out here. but I'm really, really excited for it. I can't wait till the end of July. It's been hard to sit still for the last few days knowing that we were going to do this. So I thought it would be fun just to help you get to know me a little bit, to start back when I was a kid, and one of the voices that had the most profound impact on my life was my grandpa. And my grandpa was the closest thing I believe to Jesus that's ever walked the earth. He's just an incredible person. And what was strange was I didn't call him Grandpa. His first name was Gordon, and I called him Gord. So we would go over to Grammy and Gord's house. And I called him that until I was in high school, and then I think I decided I wanted a Grandpa, and I called him Grandpa. But Gord was an interesting guy, and one of the more interesting things about him was sports. He loved sports. My dad hated sports. I love sports, which means I got all of that affection for those games from my grandpa. And we would play sports together. So my parents put a basketball slab in the backyard for me, and my grandpa and I would go out and we would shoot hoops, or we'd play catch with a baseball, or every once in a while we would play ping pong. But my grandpa never wanted to keep score. Gord hated competition. My grandpa loved competitive sports, but he liked to play cooperative sports. We played cooperative sports, and here's how those work. Josh, we're not going to play against each other in basketball. We're going to take turns taking shots, and we're going to see how many we can make in a row alternating. If we're going to play baseball, we're going to play catch, and how many times can we throw the ball before it hits the ground? Or how far away from each other can we still get and still be able to catch it before it hits the ground? Or ping pong, how many times can we go back and forth? We never, ever kept score. And I don't know if that was because he was afraid that his grandson could beat him, or he was just that kind of gentle guy. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized it's that my grandpa valued relationship over anything else. And he wasn't going to risk a game coming between him and his grandson. He wasn't going to let a score dictate the tenor of our relationship. And again, the older I've gotten, I've realized the bigger reason he didn't keep score was because he was just like Jesus. You see, in our lives, my life, my guess is yours, we all keep score. And some of us are not sports people, and I get that, but we still keep score. It's usually just, instead of numbers, it's rights and wrongs. And in our relationships, how many times has this person done right by me versus how many times have they done wrong by me? And you could think of it like a bucket. Rights get berries in the bucket, wrongs take berries out, and we want to keep a positive in that bucket, right? We keep score. The problem is when we keep track of being wronged, it leads to other things. It snowballs out of control. Let me show you how it usually works. Being wronged often leads to bitterness. When someone has done wrong to me, all of a sudden I'm going, you owe me something. You were supposed to do this and you didn't come through. You were supposed to help me with this and you did the opposite. You fill in the blank of whatever that was, but you've been wrong. Now I'm bitter. And the definition for me of bitterness is you owe me something. Bitterness will often lead to biasness, meaning you'll start to find other reasons that they've wronged you, other things that they've done wrong, right? Because now you just need to confirm the suspicion you already have. Sometimes this happens in our marriage. Sometimes this happens with our friends. It often happens with our coworkers. If you've ever had siblings in your life, or you have children that have siblings, you know how this goes, right? You might have a kid that all they ever see is what the other kid does wrong, and they make sure that you know about all of those wrongs all of the time. And those biasness will always lead to fear, which will lead to anger, which will lead to hate. And as Christians, sometimes I think this is where we get the Christian warrior mentality. It's us versus the world, right? This is our fortress of righteousness, and we have to defend it from the outsiders who surely want to pillage and destroy it. And it becomes competitive. Who's going to win, right? Who's going to win politically? Who's going to win socially? Who's going to have the highest score at the end of the day? The problem is none of those things sound anything like love. None of those. And love, in my opinion, is the central mode of operation for anyone that's following Jesus. If we call ourselves a Christian, if I'm going to say that the leader of my life is Jesus, then love has to be the primary mode by which I operate. And so here's where I land, and what I've been learning over the last 5 to 10 years of my life is that as a Christ follower, I have to forget the score. I have to forget it. I can't keep track of that anymore. Because there's this moment where Jesus is dying on the cross. And he says two things at two different points that change the game. One was he looks out at everyone that had gathered around the cross, and I believe throughout history, he looked over all of us, and he said, Father, forgive them. The people that have betrayed me, the people that have beat me, the people that have spit on me, the people that have mocked me, the people that have completely dismissed me and called me a lunatic, Father, forgive them. And all the things that they're going to do, all the things that Josh will do in his life, I want you to forgive him for them. And then at the very end, he said, it's finished. There was no forgive them unless. There was no forgive them if. It was forgive them, it's finished. Father, forget the score. That's what it means to follow Jesus. Now, everyone has this thing that's going to go off when we start having this conversation, and I call it the wait, what abouts. We're going to have this phrase go through our head a lot. Wait. But what about being taken advantage of? Like if all I ever do is forgive and I don't keep some track, then somebody could see me as a doormat. Wait, what about not being taken seriously? Like people are just going to think they can do that over and over again to me. What about that? What about the thing I've already forgiven them for? And they do it again. It can't be that intense. It can't be that serious. It can't be that demanding that we literally forget the score that we keep with the people in our lives. And here's where one of the places is I get the idea. It's in Paul's letter to the church in Corinth. We call it 1 Corinthians. And the few sentences I want to go through with you tonight, you've heard before. In fact, if you have never been to church before, you've heard what we're about to read because you probably went to a wedding in your life. And in fact, this is probably the most common passage ever read at any wedding. In fact, we have labeled it the love chapter. Heard of it, right? It's 1 Corinthians 13, and every time that two people decide they're getting hitched, the pastor lands there because we call it the love chapter, and a wedding is all about love. But I'm convinced that it's more about you and me in our everyday lives. And I could spend all night talking about just these few verses because I think not only do they describe who God is, because John said that God is love, but that means as Christians who are trying to be like Jesus, then we're supposed to be described in this way as well. But we'll do that in another talk down the road. I just want to give you these few sentences that point to this idea of forgetting the score. This is what Paul wrote. He said, love is not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. So here's what's so hard. Not only do we keep record of the wrongs against us, we don't keep track of the wrongs against others either. And here's what I mean by that. When something bad happens to us at the hands of someone else, or the mouth of someone else, or the brain of someone else, we will usually put on our good Christian hat, right? It might look a little something like this. I'm not gonna get back at them. I'm not gonna take vengeance on them. I'm an angel. right? I am a good Christian, and I've been told that I'm supposed to be slow to anger. And so I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm even going to pray for my enemies, because when I was in Sunday school, that's what they told me I should do. And this person is really my enemy, so I'm going to pray really hard for them. And then we watch. And by the way, our prayer might go something like this: God, I don't want to take vengeance on them, but if you could smite them, you are holy and just, and I know you won't let them get away with this. Amen. And then we watch, and if something bad does happen, we might smile just a little bit. Like, thank you, God, right? Don't mess with a Christian, because Christian God's going to get you. That's kind of how we were. At least is how I've been in my life, right? Initially, I start off pretty good. I'm going to forgive, and I'm not going to keep track of the wrongs against me, but I kind of hope they don't get away with it. I kind of wish bad on them. I'm not going to say that out loud. I may not even pray it out loud, but there's this small part of me that can't let go of the score. We might not chalk it up in a win-loss column, but we know, right? Like the dads whose kids play sports, you've seen those dads, and they play in this league where they don't keep score because they want all the kids to feel good. Dad's keeping score. He knows, right? That's how we all are. We keep score, even though we say we're not. I think what Jesus would encourage us to do is be a little more canine in our life. To be a little bit more like a dog, and this is my dog, Bogey. And Bogey is the cutest, sweetest, best dog in the world. You know why? Because he doesn't keep track of any of the wrongs that I've ever done with him. He loves me no matter what. I can forget to feed Bogey, and he's still going to be happy to see me when I walk in the door. I can be in a really bad mood and act like he's in my way all of the time, and he will still wag his tail when I say his name. I could ignore him all day, and when I sit down on the couch, he jumps up and sits next to me, and he's my best friend no matter what. Bogey does not keep track of the things that I've done to him. The reason we call dogs man's best friend is because man stinks at being man's best friend. We need somebody to step in. Because if you do anything wrong to me, it's going to be really difficult for me to come back and be kind to you. And yet, that's what it means to follow Jesus. I've shared with you a couple of times that one of my favorite disciples is Peter, because Peter always asks the question that all of us would ask if we were there with Jesus. Because he's very, very, very human. And I don't know if Jesus was giving this kind of talk when Peter asked us. Well, I know he was. Jesus was talking about forgiveness. And Peter raises his hand. And this is what he asks in the Gospel of Matthew. Peter came to him and asked, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? And Peter steps out on a limb and he's like 7 times? Like, that sounds like a lot, right? If someone were to wrong you 7 times, would you forgive them 7 times? I mean, how many of us have forgiven somebody twice? Peter's like, I'm going to swing for the fences. Jesus can't tell me I'm wrong here. I'm going to say 7 times. But Jesus comes back and he says, no, not 7 times. He replied, but 70 times 7. Now, a lot of us in the room are going 70 times 7, 491. So if they do it 491 times, I'm off the hook. I don't have to forgive them anymore, right? But what Jesus is really getting at here is you have to forgive infinitely. That's the whole turn the other cheek. You have to be willing to be like Bogey. You have to be willing to be like the dog, because you don't know the score in the first place. You don't know the difference between 491 and 1. Because as Christians, it's just not how we're supposed to be wired. We're supposed to be radical forgivers who forget the score. We play cooperative sports, not competitive sports. We're supposed to be the people that bring people together, not divide people out. We're supposed to be the people that I think get looked at in the store and in family circles and in the work break room. People go, what is wrong with that person? They are so gracious, and they're so merciful, and they're so forgiving. I have never met anyone like that. I grew up in the church. I've shared that with you, and I remember hearing about 1,000 times that you and I are supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. In the world, but not of the world. Have you ever heard that before? A lot of us have, right? Now, here's what I thought that meant. You don't smoke, you don't drink, you don't say bad words, and you don't go to dances. And maybe every once in a while we'd throw in, and we don't watch R-rated movies, right? Like that's what it meant to be in the world, but not of the world. And I'm really grateful for the way I grew up. It taught me some good things. But if you want to be not of this world, forget the score. You want people to notice that there's something different about you? This is it. This is the thing that's going to make people sit up straight in their chair and lean in and want to know what's going on with you. It's not because you're going to be so different than them that you make them feel guilty about the things and the hang-ups or whatever that they have. It's going to be that you're so gracious. That's what it means to not be of this world. Over and over again, if you read, in fact, just that entire love chapter, and it's not really even the whole chapter, it's just a paragraph in the chapter. If you knew someone like that, you'd go, they might be an alien, because they just don't match the rest of the world. Here's how I think of it. A lot of us live by a budget, yes? A lot of us have a budget financially where we keep track of what we make in a month versus what we spend in a month. And if you've ever listened to Dave Ramsey, you know how that works, right? Even if you've never listened to Dave Ramsey, you know that at some point, money is finite and it will run out. So we have to keep track of these things. And we know this is what we're going to spend in rent, and this is what we're going to spend in restaurants, and then we've got a backup restaurant thing because we're going to eat out more than we planned, of course. And, right? Hopefully by the end of the month, we have some stuff left over. And then we hear about somebody that won the lottery. And they get to live the rest of their life with no budget, right? They live literally like money is no object. And I was thinking about this the day I heard about Patrick Mahomes' brand new contract in the NFL a couple years ago. Now, if you're not a sports fan, it doesn't matter. I'm not about to talk football. I'm going to keep talking dollars and cents. Patrick Mahomes signed a contract for 10 years. And the dollar amount attached to the 10 years was just shy of $500 million with a B dollars. $500 million. Now, I am not a math expert, but I broke it down for you. Over the next 10 years, that means that Patrick Mahomes will make $125,000 a day. A day. He literally, and that does not include all of his commercial money and his shoe money and all of that stuff. He can literally live like money was no object. He could light a $100 bill on fire and not think twice. He could take a backpack full of money and dump it in the toilet and flush it, and it wouldn't make him flinch. That's the kind of money, 120. Most of us would love to make that in 2 years, let alone a day. But money's no object. So here's the deal for you and for me. We may never make that kind of money. If you do, Dave would like to have a conversation with you after church. Most of us never will make that kind of money, but it doesn't mean that we aren't in the similar position. Because you and I, as Christ followers, have been forgiven and given so much grace that we should dish it out as if it were no object. We should live as if grace is no object, as if forgiveness is no object, as if mercy is no object, because our Lord and Savior, Jesus, died for us and forgave us. He dropped the score. He turned the scoreboard off. That is a pile of grace that you can't get through. So why would I ever be stingy with it? It's a bottomless pit of grace. It's 125,000 units of grace a day and some. So when I get hung up about being forgiving, when I get hung up about a score, this is what I come back to. Why am I hung up on that? As if the amount of grace I've been shown and the forgiveness that I've been shown is finite, because it isn't. It's infinite. And that's why Jesus could look Peter in the face and say 70 times 7. Because I got all you need, and you can just keep handing it out, because I'll keep giving it to you. Now here's what's really amazing to me. Over the last few years, the world has been catching up to Jesus. And even people outside the church and outside of Christianity are starting to see that there's something to this grace, mercy, and forgiveness thing. And not holding on to that, not getting angry and bitter and all of those kinds of things. So much so that there's an entire field of philosophy now dedicated to happiness. And one of those philosophers of happiness is named Jonathan Huey. And I don't know that he's a Christian or anything, but he points to this idea of what it means and what it does when we forgive someone. Listen to what he said. I love this. Forgive others not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. And that's the hard part, right? They owe me. They have more points than me, more wrongs than I've wronged them. And we have that internal battle and struggle. And you know what? They don't care. They don't care. They're not going to bed at night going, you know what? I think I'm up on them for wrongs. They're just going to keep doing whatever they're doing. Who's suffering? You and me. And so Jesus comes into our life and he says, let go of that. I'm going to give you peace. I'm going to give you life and some. And the way to that is not going to be the ways that you commonly think, like financially and success-wise and climbing some ladder. It's going to be that you are not going to live with a scoreboard in your pocket. You're not going to carry that burden. You get to live with peace. And, philosopher of happiness thing, that sounds really kind of, but I found another source that I think might really land. It's Johns Hopkins University. A lot of us know Johns Hopkins University. They have done studies on forgiveness now. You can read about these on the internet. Google it. They have found that people who are the most forgiving in life lower their cholesterol, lower their blood pressure, lower their anxiety, get off of depression medicine, extend their life expectancy. In essence, they live a better life the more forgiving they are. And I just imagine Jesus, by the way, in heaven going, I told him that like 2,000 years ago. Like I literally said that to you. And you had to do studies. But I just love it when the world kind of catches up to what Jesus has been saying, to what you and I say we believe. So what if we just did that? What if we decided that we were not going to be the referee who watches the scoreboard? What if we just left that up to Jesus? Well, here's what Jesus says would happen. Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn others, or it will all come back against you. I need a lot of grace. So I'm just determined to give a lot of grace so that when I stand in front of Jesus face to face, he goes, you got buckets full. So that's what I'm giving you. Because I really don't think I'm going to sit down, and I don't know what it's actually going to be like. This is just Josh's like childish imagination. That I'm going to get like 1,000 years of coffee dates with Jesus, right? Like all at once, because 1,000 years is like a day, right? So I'm just going to get my 1,000 years with Jesus, me and him, coffee, and I'm just going to have questions for him. But what I don't think he's ever going to do is look back at me and go, Josh, you were too forgiving. You know what? You were too gracious. Do you think he'd ever say that to you? I mean, that's a different Jesus than what I've read about and come to know. The Jesus that would say you were too much of those things. If anything, he's going to say, I showed you the ultimate and the pinnacle of forgiveness and grace and love. And you didn't even try. So for me, I'm so grateful that my grandpa taught me to forget the score, because I think that's what Jesus told us. Forget the score. Stop being the judge. Stop being the jury. Please stop being the executioner. Like, don't be any of those things. Just show up and radically love people. Radically forgive people. Don't be the wait, what about person. Trust him that he's got it. He's in control. All power has been given to him. So we just can trust him. I just got to show up and love you. And you just got to show up and love me. And be insanely gracious. So here's what I want to encourage you to do this week. Over the next 7 days, I'm going to give you a really practical thing to do. And for those of you who get a weird trigger when I say the word journal, you can just get a loose leaf piece of paper, okay? You don't need to go out and get the leather-bound pencil and all that stuff. This is a piece of paper, and here's what I want you to do. Sit down with a pen and a piece of paper. Don't do it on your phone. Don't do it on your computer, because you'll get distracted. A piece of paper, and just write out over and over again all the you owe me's in your life. Everything that you would say you're hanging on to. It might have been betrayal in a dating relationship. It might have been a lie in a marital relationship. It might have been abandonment in a friendship. It might have been some crazy weird competition thing between you and a sibling. And you're just walking around every day carrying that scoreboard in your pocket. And sometimes the score is so big, it's in a bag that you're lugging around with you, and your life is hindered because of it. So just write them all down. And if you've got 500 of them, that's okay. That's okay. If you just got a few of them, but they're doozies, that's okay too. But just this practice of writing down, so-and-so owes me an apology. So-and-so owes me forgiveness. So-and-so owes me money. So-and-so owes me payback. Right? And you just list them all out. And then, where you might have to spend a little extra money is go buy a red pen. And I know this is going to sound really silly, but there's something to physically doing something. You're going to buy a red pen, and over the top of every one of those you owe me's, you're just going to write this word: forgiven. Forgiven. I'm not keeping score about that thing anymore. And you can decide if you're going to have a conversation with the people that you list, but at the very least, in your heart and in your mind, you're going to go through the practice of, I'm turning off the scoreboard. That is forgiven. Grace and mercy and forgiveness. Over and over and over again. If you've got a list of 500, your hand's going to get sore. You're just going to keep writing forgiven. And if you've got a few that are doozies, you're just going to write it really big. Maybe get a Sharpie marker instead of a red pen. But you are going to force yourself to start thinking how Jesus did. Because that is exactly what happened that day. He took all of your you owe hims, and over every single one, he wrote forgiven in red. And you and I get to live life free and at peace. Let's offer that to everybody we come in contact with. can you imagine for a second what life would be like for you if you showed up at work tomorrow without a grudge, without the bitterness over what your boss assigned to you that shouldn't have been assigned to you, or the extra hours you were asked to work? Can you imagine what it would do in your marriage if you walked home into the house tonight and you had let go of all the maybe many years of things, and you said, there's no more score. I'm not keeping track of the rights and wrongs, because those rights and wrongs were not kept track of for me. And if they keep keeping score, that's up to them, but not so with you. That's what Gord taught me, because that's what Jesus taught him. Let me pray for you. Lord, in theory, this all sounds really simple, and it sounds really good, but it is really, 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 really hard. It just is. And there are days where I go, I'm not Jesus, and I can't get this. And I do know you go, I know you're not. So I'll help you. So will you just help us with forgiveness? Will you help us with grace and with mercy? Will you help us to not be the judges in our relationships? Will you help us to turn off the score so that we can experience the peace and the freedom that comes with that, the good that comes with a loose grip on the wrongs that have been given to us, done to us? Because we literally can't do it without you. So walk with us through each and every day of our week so that we're more like you each and every step of the way. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for joining us here at Great Lakes Church. Again, my name is Carson, and I'm so glad that you chose to share some time with us this week. We hope something in this talk was meaningful to you, encouraging to you, and maybe even something worth writing down that you can go share with a friend. If you'd like to get involved, maybe join us at one of our physical locations in Southeast Wisconsin, or just be a part of our many other goings-on our social platforms or events in the area. Check out greatlakeschurch.com.